to see So good to see familiar faces and hopefully new faces that will be joining us if you should feel comfortable. I just want to offer every time I'm on Zoom, I really enjoy having the gallery view. It's nice to like sit in a sangha. So you can look at me if you'd like, but it's also really nice to see the sangha, especially if they're on camera. It feels like we're sitting together. So I invite you to choose that option if you want. It's just those little square bars up in the right corner, usually that says view. You can toggle between what feels right for you. And first, I just want to invite us to arrive from where we are, meaning please share in our chat a little bit about where you are. And I'm just going to name, I know where Piero is. And I was already going to start tonight by saying our Floridian brothers and sisters, we are sending so much ease and just capacity to get through all it looks like is going on there. So Piero, I'm so glad you're here and I'm glad you're safe. And, grateful for your presence, but want to also please invite folks to just place in the chat where is your being inhabiting? What lands are you in? What place are you in? I'm calling to you from Taos, New Mexico. And I'm grateful for the fall and the beautiful sky that's clear and warm this evening here. I sit on Pueblo lands, and the Pueblo that has been for thousands of years in existence is about a mile west of me. So just good to know where we're all kind of arriving from in the chat. Yeah, Deerfield Beach, East Coast of Florida, Stephen, Christina, and Prescott, Layla, if I hope I'm saying your name correctly, from Denver. Leah, thank you. Lilia, that's a wonderful name. Thank you for that. Larry is in Salida, Colorado. Great. Yeah, so nice to know we've got probably some folks who are near to the center and far from the center, right? It's nice to know we stretch in different directions. Yeah, and Elaine sharing from Illinois and the Potawatomi lands. And I'm not going to guess your name with your login, but we have someone with the end Mac from Westminster, Colorado. Lovely to have you here. And so I'm really delighted to have this time with you all. I really enjoy these experiences to be interactive, talking together, practicing together, learning together. So at any point, as I'm offering different practices or content tonight, and you'd like to share something, please feel free to, raise a little hand. There's the little icons down in the bottom that we can use. I think they're here. Yes, under the reactions, I believe you can raise a hand or give a thumbs up. I'm not sure if there's actually the raise your hand button. Anyway, let me know. Do like this. That equally works just fine. We don't need the little emoji. So just to please let it be as engaging as you would like it to be this evening so that you are able to get what you're hoping to get out of being here. I'm gonna mute. There we go. I have a puppy in the background who may or may not bark as activity happens as I'm outside. So we're going to arrive with just a little settling practice before I get too much farther. I just wanted to bring us into the space from our directions of where we are. So I'm just going to invite us to, if it's comfortable for you, let your eyes close for a few moments. And as you allow yourself to arrive here, I want to invite you and point you to let yourself arrive where you are in this moment, in the place that your body resides. So often we're moving and going and doing in our lives, we forget that we can pause to be present with the place we're in. I invite you to begin to attune to maybe the soundscape that's here with you. Maybe begin to become present to the qualities of the air, the textures of it, the temperatures of it, the movement of it. And to also let yourself really feel the presence of your surroundings. Often various forms of life moving around us, part of this place we're inhabiting. And maybe it's to feel the support and the containment of the home you're in, the lands your body sits with and on. So we invite ourselves to arrive in this place and with this place. And of course, whatever we might be carrying with us from our day, what's unfolded, that might be arriving too. So let that be here. No need to push it away, just honoring its presence as you settle and as you arrive. And then landing a little more intentionally in your inner landscape. And as you feel into your own inner landscape, this being in the way that it is now. Just maybe offering a moment of gratitude for choosing to be here in this moment, to spend this time in this way, to take care in this way. Maybe offering yourself a few moments to just take a few longer, slower, bigger breaths. And then when you're ready, you can gently shift your attention from your practice, taking the time you need to transition and returning to our community and our time together. So I'll just share that my crickets are here with us and I'm appreciating the fragrances. If I could smell a vision for you, I'd send those right on over. So it's very earthy from the breakdown of the leaves that have begun, and it's a bit moist from some rain we had. So just for yourselves, maybe attuning to the way that now maybe we're just a little more present to where we are. We forget that we're part of all of this, all of life, all of nature, and it's constantly here for us to remember, to be in relationship with. So I'm going to be pointing us to different ways to deepen that tonight. And if you'd like, you're welcome to chat in the chat box any experience that you notice from that practice that might be helpful to share with the community, or you can raise your hand and we can check in. And I want to offer that what would it be like to just reflect on, what's brought you here? Something about the topic and probably about your love of nature, right? Your love, your connection, its goodness, its support, its healing potential. If you'd like to speak to that in the chat, I would love to hear that as well, because that is my intention for tonight, is to really point us into, this healing connection we do have with nature. She is here in all types of different forms at any moment for us to feel that part ofness, that we're not separate. And in that, we experience healing, all kinds of different types of healing. And while I wrote a book that points us to lots of different ways to maybe explore some of that, I think we all have our unique ways that we're touched by the healing power, by the love and the connection we feel when we're in the presence of the natural world and with the presence of the natural world. Yeah. Yeah. So Leela sharing, leaning into this time of harvest. Yes. And surrounded by the scents of herbs and tomatoes. Yeah. Lovely. We're going to actually do a little practice rhythms with life tonight. That's from the book that talks about what's it like to lean into the rhythms and the wellspring that we can have from attuning our own being to the rhythms of the natural world. But maybe you want to speak to something you just know about the healing power of nature, or the love and the connection that you have to it. I know for myself, it doesn't take much. I walk outside many times. I probably spend actually most of my day outside as much as I possibly can. Hence the setup of sitting outside. Jesse just asked, "Are you familiar with Zoom?" I said, "Oh yes, I see lots of clients on Zoom, and this is where we sit. We sit right here with nature." But my connection out here is ever changing. But there's a deep thread of just love and appreciation for the goodness of when I look over the beautiful mountain or the blue sky or the stability of a tree friend. I just feel that nurturing love coming through to me. Right? This is part of my practice of connection. And it's important that we wake up to what that is and remember what that is. Right? So I want to talk a little bit about the experience of the evening and what I plan to kind of speak to, give you a little lay of the land, but just know it's threaded in what I'm pointing to. And I want us to really deepen our presence of our healing connection with nature and how we each experience that in our own ways. And thank you, Piero. Being with you in the Sangha and Ecosattvas is important to solidify, yes, the activism of saving our planet. Yes, it is. Portion of this evening will be spent on, because we love her so much and we're so connected to her, we can wake up even more to take action to help her. Right. And so we all have doorways to feel our presence and connection with the natural world. And as we're healed and connected and supported by her, my hope is your heart breaks wide open to want to help her in some way. So I wrote the book Healing with Nature intentionally because there were ways that I was experiencing my own path of practice and being steeped in various teachings to understand the transformative power of the relationship of meditation practice and somatic healing practices, which I'll speak to in a little while. They're a trauma-informed therapy practice. But as that was culminating, it was becoming clearer and clearer to me that the reciprocity of the relationship that was forming in the healing with nature began to give people access to caring so much more deeply about wanting to take action. And so as trauma was beginning to be healed with nature, began to dawn on me that We are experiencing Mother Earth with intense traumatic experiences. We're in the midst of watching one right now here in the US in Florida. In fact, this evening I had been tracking today on the news periodically. Just going to get a little help with the dog who's going to start barking here in a moment. But I had been tracking that today, and actually about an hour ago, I went in to just check and see, and I felt the flood of my nervous system get triggered by the trauma of all of the aftermath that is being shown on the media right now. And it's a reaction to want to turn away from it because it's too much. Or it's a reaction to get over flooded, literally and figuratively, right, by all of this information, and to want to collapse or feel the hopelessness of it or the despair of it. And there's also the possibility of our practice to turn to it and say, let my heart break open that this is happening. This is happening. Like, there's no escaping that that's what's happening on this planet. And we each have a role to heal our own inner landscape such that as we heal it with the natural world, we begin to see our gifts as a reflection of the possibility of healing this earth. So when I wrote the book, it was to begin to point to each one of those ways that we could develop our own inner agency of healing with the natural world so that we give back to her in some way. So that's kind of my hope for this evening, is to take you a little through the book, is to lead us in some practices that, just like we did when we arrived, I'll do another one here in a few moments, to arrive with our connection with the natural world, to open us up into facing some of our own places inwardly that we might be stuck, that we might have trauma that doesn't allow us the fullest agency of living in our life, to taste more agency then through some practices of working with that, of living more fully in our life, knowing what that feels like, so that we are more touched and open and willing to go back to watching and being heartbroken about what's happening. So we're moved, and we have the resources now as we're moved into action to take care differently. How many of you, just maybe you can show those of you on the screen with a hand and just type a yes in the chat if you're not on screen. How many of you have had your heart broke open by the pain the earth is experiencing? Right. We are not alone, right? I'm pretty sure our hands of the friends that are not on camera are up. Yeah, I feel really a poignancy to this tonight because I was just in it, a few minutes ago, of like not wanting to look, not certain how to let my heart feel all of these feelings for what's happening right now with this climate crisis that we're watching in Florida that's unfolding. So if we don't have regulated inner ecosystems, is like how I like to refer to them, the inner system of your mind, of your heart, of your body, of your spirit, if we don't have those regulated and healthy in a way that we feel agency with, we will tend to turn away or engage in the collapse or try to check out in some way because it's too much. So it's important that we first do the work in our own inner landscape. How do our own inner experiences of our well-being, how do we know that they're healthy, they're organized, they're regulated, they're here with their full agency, potency, aliveness, so that they're here to take action with the world? Because otherwise, if I've had a very busy day, or I've had my own events in my life going on, right? The space that's on the inside is slowly getting taken up because I'm dealing with all of the things that are going on in my life. How, if it's all you know, not resourced, not supported, I'm not going to have very much to turn to all of these big experiences that are going on in the globe. And we can think that, oh, how can sitting and being present with my breath or with feeling more grounded or working with my own little piece of challenge for the day, how is that helping what just happened in the last 24 hours in Florida? But I firmly believe that it is, because what happens to a dysregulated internal one person system is that dysregulation will go on to cause more dysregulation around us, and more dysregulation and more dysregulation and more dysregulation. You can take that as big as you'd like to metaphorically, but it's probably part of what the problem is of why we're in the mess we're in. So the importance of knowing that if this being, as it's wedded to the rest of all of this life, is more organized, is more healthy, and we're doing our part here, we have then not only more capacity for our own regulation to then beget more regulation. So, or the healing that we have will beget more healing around us because we're showing up in a much more organized, healthy, engaged, clear, functional way to help. It doesn't go so well when we're too dysregulated. It's why activism and activists tend to get super overwhelmed. They jump in, they forget that their being is part of the equation here, and get flooded by it's too much. There's a reciprocity of the health of our system to the health of the systems we're trying to help that has to be learned to negotiate and be balanced well. So that really is what I hope the different practices that I offer and support people in learning allow for more possibility. I have a dear friend who's a flight nurse, and her skills of learning how to be a regulated being go so much farther in that flight nursing than the nursing itself to help that person get through the trauma of that moment that they're going through. She has remarkable stories she always tells me, like the handhold that she gave, the supportive touch of reminding the person that they could breathe. Her regulation to a nervous system that was dysregulated in that moment actually helped the treatment go better. So imagine what that looks like on an earth level, right? More regulated beings, more regulated, healthy, organizing choices around the support of the earth. So I want to move us first into another practice. As we move, we're going to move through the book a little bit. And we're going to practice just the first section of the book is really pointing us, how do we land in our presence with nature? I think those of you that I know on this call have a lot of practice experience already. So this part might feel fairly familiar. We're just going to take some time to really establish our presence with the natural world. So some of you may be indoors, which is fine. And I'm going to ask you, even if it's to point to a window or to a plant or, natural world is still happening in our homes. I realize our homes are made of wood or made of things that are of the earth, but nice to bring in something that is of the natural world. And you all don't mind, I'm going to take care of a being who's going to growl during our practice. Give me one moment. I'm not able to help them. I'm going to pause our recording. Okay, so hopefully that gave us a chance to orient to something that we bring in of the natural world with us. So I'm just going to invite you to orient your body to whatever that natural expression connection to nature is for you in this moment. Allowing your body to settle into a posture that feels supportive. And remembering that our conditions are constantly changing, just as the natural world is. So Really listening to your conditions in this moment, this evening, of what your body really needs for this time, for this practice. Maybe it's to sit, but maybe it's to recline or to lay down. And choosing for a few moments to really let yourself attune to this place. This time of day, there may be a quieting of the energies of life around you as we're in the sunset or evening hours. Maybe there's a quieting in the landscape or a bit cooler. So as you attune to this moment, conditions that are here with the natural world, seeing how that lands in this moment in your inner landscape. Maybe you hear a soft sound and that lands as a calming sense in the heart. Or you feel the slowing of the rhythms of life's activity, and that begins to settle or relax the body. Or letting your body be touched and supported by the way the natural world is here, helping your inner rhythms, your inner movements of life to be touched and supported. Now I invite you to really sense the posture of your body, all the ways the body has support in this moment. The contact of the chair or the earth, touch of soft clothing, a blanket, a pillow. And I want to invite you to see if you can really let the body receive all of that support. Lean into receiving it and sensing some stability and support that's here with you. And then now inviting you to bring your attention to the breath. This breath that receives the oxygen from the trees and the grasses and the plants. In this moment, feeling that breath coming into the body. And then noticing the release, the letting go, the carbon dioxide that's offered freely again back out to this natural world to support its life. So presence to breath, and breath as part of this reciprocity of life. Maybe you can sense or be curious about sensing how each breath offers nourishment, support, healing. Maybe we sense the sweetness of a breath and it soothes the body. Or the way the exhale relaxes, softens, settles the body. So moment to moment, breathing with all of nature, all of life in this moment. So as we arrive into the last few moments of this practice, Just appreciating what it's like to really feel and sense maybe a little bit more of the not separateness of our nature being as part of all of this natural world. Appreciating the goodness that it is to remember each moment we breathe. We are part of this life in this moment. I'd love to invite you to transition back at your own pace to whatever feels right. Maybe you want to continue to just stay as I offer more reflection and teaching, but I'd also welcome any voices or shares that would like to come into the space about that practice. If you're on camera, or actually not, you can just feel free to unmute. You should be able to unmute yourself, I believe. And yeah, just maybe a couple shares. Yeah, Piero.
So it's always wonderful to just to merge. I think that the word is merge, you know, and there's such a sense of relaxation, really. And I'm ready to take a nap as usual. But it's lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Rochelle.
Yeah. Thank you for that word, Piero. The merge, right? The remembering we are merged. We're not separate. And there is something so soothing about that. There's something so relaxing about tasting that and feeling that and knowing that in the inner sense of our being. Yeah, really important. Yeah. Points to that regulation I was speaking to. We need that to be of service in some way. Yeah, Steve or Krista, please.
Can I be heard?
Yes, yeah, yeah. Hi.
There was, as breathing in and feeling that with the entire world was, that's an exercise I hadn't done before.
Mm.
And I don't know how to say it felt. It felt good. I don't know how to describe it really. It wasn't like it was a merge. I don't know what it was.
Mm.
I thank you for that very much. And I could see the potential influence that could have. It could be significant. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Steve. Yeah. Good is a good word. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Can I say briefly that hi, Steve. Hi, Krista. It's nice to see you guys. I love you very much. Elaine, nice to see you. and everybody else. I'm
Yeah.
just seeing, I'm just recognize people
Mhm.
that we've been together in the adventure.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Thank you for that, piano. Yeah, yeah. It is good, right? And then we remember we're breathing together. We are one as a community together. And yeah, yeah. So, you know, as many of you probably know, and have many different ways to practice being present with nature, we find our doorways, we find the ways that let us taste more of this good or this merge or this sense of not separate. And the more we cultivate that in whatever form that we have to support that, the more the beautiful antidotes of the healing that we need begin to show themselves, right? Maybe we remember that, oh, right, I am part of all this, and that brings me joy, and I needed some joy, right? Like, or maybe we are, tonight I was just feeling the sweet, like, lullaby of these crickets, and I felt like, oh, I just so needed to be sung to, right? There was something about just something singing and speaking and talking to me. I do a lot of support with talking and practicing all day, so it was something nice about that today. And my nervous system says thank you, right, on the inside. And so, the practices that we can evolve, I point to them in the book. The first part of the book really points to the first foundation of mindfulness. If some of you are familiar with the four foundations, the first part of that healing with nature, section 1, is the focus of really learning how to land fully with nature in our breath, to land fully with nature through our senses, land fully with our bodies, this animated, living, breathing, organizing, vibrating being body with nature. And then to explore a little bit of the elements of this body as part of and with nature. So the intention of that first section is to really deepen our not separateness, our ability to find different ways we can practice being present with nature so that we wake up to that, right? Like your body, right, being this vessel that we inhabit and is its own expression of nature. You don't ever, I don't look at the leaves or look at the mountain and go, that's not an awesome mountain and an awesome leaf. And like what an amazing, vibrating, organizing entity that leaf or that mountain is. It's learning how our body is not separate. I am equally this leaf. I'm made of the same elements. I'm made of the same elements of that mountain that sits just over my shoulder. And as I deepen that, there's some sense of that touching into that reciprocity that I was speaking to earlier. It begins to really wake up, and it's nourishing and it's supportive, and it brings us great peace and great ease. So I want to talk a little bit more directly now about the second section of the book, which is, as we're more wedded in this presence with the earth and with nature, maybe we're listening to our inner landscape differently now. Like, oh, okay, maybe I'm feeling all those great qualities that we were just pointing to, but I also equally might be discovering, oh no, there's some things I haven't been looking at, right? Like, um, for me today, I was sitting before coming on, and it's always interesting when you choose to practice outside of your normal practice time, like what begins to shed itself to the surface when we're practicing. And as I was sitting this evening, I could feel the deep sadness that I was avoiding from what I had been seeing on the media. Like deep, deep sadness, like moved to the edge of tears, sadness for the people suffering, to the planet suffering, to seeing not just through these images of what is typically focused on in the media, the devastation to the homes or people, which is important, but the literal devastation to the earth. Like seeing that. And I could feel my heart just like aching. Like it's hard. It's hard to turn to that, right? So when we attune more, this means we do attune more. And sometimes that's to the more challenging places, both with the earth and both with ourselves. It's hard to turn towards what is my part in that, without becoming hopeless or despair, full of despair or shame, judgment, or guilt. I know that, my actions, just living in this world that we live in, I do my best, but we're all part of it. Right? And it's hard to face that. And we can feel the heaviness of the weight of, right, like, if I drove a little less, if I, whatever it might be. And it's important that we have skills to turn to that and not get lost and flooded and overwhelmed by it. So the second section of the book is really pointing us to how do we turn to the places that are really painful, the places that we might have stuck in our own nervous systems, in our own conditioning, life experiences that have happened, so that we wake up to them and heal them so they don't get in the way in the ways that they might, that we're unconsciously unaware of. So this is where the somatic healing practices are really supportive for our well-being. And I'm going to make somewhat of an assumption. Please feel free, if you know about somatic experiencing, you're welcome to share and add. But I think many of us maybe are more in the meditation Dharma community orientation of these teachings, and somatic wisdom might be, it's a very close parallel to the first foundation, but it's a trauma-informed orientation of body practices, soma meaning the body, that we can learn how to participate with so that we can turn towards the intensity in a skillful way. There's lots of different Dharma teachings and skillful ways within the Dharma teachings to work with difficulty. And what we have learned about trauma, particularly, is there's a way that the body dysregulates and disorganizes itself around unhealed trauma. And the beautiful thing about this, that the developer kind of, I don't even know if he would call himself a developer. He would probably call himself a discoverer of the orientation of somatic experiencing, is that he went and just studied wild animals for quite some time and watched how they survived and thrived in difficult situations, and how they would be able to, take care of themselves under threat and not get stuck. They'd still go back to being them animal selves, like doing animal things and thriving in the world. And the author of this is Peter Levine, and he was mesmerized by how they could do it and we could not. And it's called our lovely cortices that live up here that have evolved us into so many beautiful ways of living and functioning as human beings, but have also disconnected us from our primal rights to survival. So what he really did was author into existence these lessons from nature about how we could wake up to our own nature survival being much more skillfully than we were currently doing. So the techniques or the practices that he's offered are around how do we skillfully stay in relationship to the body present to the places that might hold stuck or challenging traumatic experiences that we've had in our life that we haven't healed from, in a way where we can, this is where the beauty of mindfulness is so important, because we can be present in an intentional way to our internal landscape such that we literally unwind the trauma from our nervous systems. And once that's released, our system actually has much more potency to operate as it's designed. So you might be thinking, well, okay, that's good. And what traumas do I have? Maybe I've healed them already. That's very possible. There's so many different doorways to that healing process. But if we find ourselves kind of stuck in loops or patterns of things get too much and we check out, things get too much and we just start wrestling the heck out of it, or things get too much and we're just like, I gotta peace out, I'm fleeing, I'm running away. Those patterns overused don't allow us to stay in contact with what's difficult. And that might be wedded to trauma we don't have healed in our nervous system. So I'm going to lead us in a little practice on this in a bit, just to give you a taste of it. But it's not meant to be in the formal way that we typically practice meditation. It's to taste it, get curious about using it as a way to work with the difficulty internally so that we're listening to our inner landscape differently and giving it what it might need to be able to heal. So, anybody have the experience ever when they get anxious, just for example, or maybe let's use sadness, because that was really here for me tonight. When you get sad, that all of a sudden there's a sense of heaviness that might come on, or there's a sense of, this is too much, I want to cry, right? Right. And we have these difficult emotions that come on. We have this relationship of usually somatically feeling it, but we're not naming the somatic experience. I always find it really interesting when people start, I say, well, what emotion are you having? Oh, I'm anxious or I'm sad. Well, what's that like? Oh, it's so heavy. It's, I just feel like I got such a heavy heart. They're describing it analytically or describing an emotion. And wedded somewhere in there is a somatic sensation that's being named almost every time. When somebody is anxious, they say, oh, I had a feeling in my gut. Oh, that's probably true. You did have a somatic feeling in your gut. So when you start listening to the phrases and the expressions that we use to describe our feelings or difficult states, there's a thread in there usually of the body trying to speak its wisdom. So it's a place to start. It's a place to start with. So tonight, when I felt that sadness, I knew it was sadness immediately. And I had the story of where it was being authored from, which was being not wanting to be present to this pain that I was seeing. And then there's the wisdom in the skill set of being with my experiences somatically, to just sit with the heaviness. Just say, yes, that's all true. And there's heaviness here in my body right now. How can I give the heaviness permission to be here? How can I kindly meet that heaviness? Let it be heavy. Let my body be with the heaviness. Not turn away, not resist, not judge. And it gives me a chance to kind of drop where the whole conditioning tends to get, or the reactivity tends to get stirred up, and be able to just sit with, oh, the heaviness of my heart. Yes, yes, yes. And then there's this other beautiful practice that I will lead us in a moment that I also used in that moment, called pendulation. And what also Peter discovered is, and many of us as meditators probably already knew this, but he discovered that we could be with that heaviness, no matter what it was related to, the trauma in our life, the difficulty of the moment. We could be with it more skillfully when we had something that we could pendulate or move our attention to that felt supportive, like the earth beneath our feet, like the sounds of the crickets, like the breath that's steadying or reminding us we're part of all of this. So when there was some tether, something that felt grounding, orienting into the here and now, supportive to the relaxation, to the steadying, to the regulation of our internal system, and we could go back and forth between that which feels supportive and grounding and that which feels really difficult to be with. Something really beautiful and magical happens between moving your attention back and forth like this. And what happens is it's not about trying to make this, the difficulty, feel like this. It's actually about remembering we get to hold both. And as we hold both and we sense a little bit more of that, things become clear, things begin to release, things begin to become more resourced for us to deal with whatever it is that's going on. So like tonight, when I held the sadness and the heaviness that was here, the coolness of the evening was really with me as it was beginning to set in. The temperature changed here and I could be present to that. The coolness of that and the sadness going back and forth. I had a moment of like, oh, thank you. Because thank you for letting me be present to that sadness of our earth. That's what I am up to. There was like a moment of deep gratitude. Pain's still here. Sadness is still here, but I can have like this gratitude, and what begins to percolate through is like this fierce gratitude. Like, I love this planet so much. Of course I'm sad. Like, and of course, and then there becomes some agency that starts to want to come through. It's not being lost in the sadness or in the despair of the sadness. So the somatic knowing with nature is this ability to learn how to resource ourselves well, to hold the intensities that are here, so we can find that different way of holding or experiencing a different kind of knowing that begins to speak forward into our health or our life for our well-being and hopefully for the planet. So I thought I'd lead you on a little bit of that somatic practice just to give you a taste. You all up for that at this hour of the day where it is for you? Okay. I didn't name this at the beginning, but I realized 2 hours at the hour of dinner for some of us. Please take care of yourself. Get your food, go to the bathroom, make sure you're taking care. But I will lead us in a little pendulation practice. I'm just going to invite that my example I'm offering tonight, is one that on, if I were scaling it for myself on a 1 to 10, it's probably hovering in the more 7, 8 department. It was pretty big for me tonight to sit with that. You don't need to choose something that big when we're doing this practice this evening. It could be just something that, like, maybe today there was a mild irritation. Maybe today there was a flicker of anxiety. Yeah. So we don't need, and the point of these practices, somatically speaking, is not to need the narrative, right? As hopefully you heard in the description that I offered, it's less about needing to have all of that to focus on. It's more about, oh, that experience was here. How does that feel in my body? So we're going to use whatever, some flicker, some flavor of something today that was a little challenging for you to kind of be dropped into the somatic sense of the body so we can pay attention to what the body has to say about that experience. Okay. So good news in somatic practices is there is always a strong invitation for being very comfortable. So sometimes that's less about our meditative posture and a little bit more given. Again, we're going to work with something difficult. We want the resource, all the good, supportive, well-being, groundedness that we can foster to be here with us as we work with this. So body comfortable. Maybe it is extremely comfortable for you to take your meditation posture. That's fine too, whatever you'd like. So finding that posture for yourself. And as we settle into this practice, just know that we've offered a lot of information to the mind. The mind might be planning or thinking or trying to figure out or anticipate. And for now, just giving the mind the permission to not need to try to think its way through, but rather to be present to this practice as it unfolds. So I want to invite us first to bring the attention to the body. In particular, bringing your attention to your body and seeing if you can just gently do a slow sweep of the attention through the entire body, starting at the base of the feet. And slowly moving your attention through all the way to the crown of the head. And as you're paying attention to the body and awakening to the different sensations that are here in the body now, seeing if you can get curious about where in your body right now do you sense some quality of steadiness or groundedness or supportedness. Maybe this is the way you feel some density in the muscles of the legs. And the sits bones and the rootedness of that. Or maybe it's just simply the soft touch of the way the feet are making contact with the earth. But for yourself, really landing in where in your body in this moment you feel that sense of groundedness, steadiness. And just bringing your full presence to that part of the body to really feel all the ways that groundedness is here now. And if you're not able to anchor on something in the body in this moment that feels grounded, it's okay to touch into the natural world and sense what's here with the support of nature that feels grounding. And as you let your presence be with this grounded sense, just notice how that maybe supports the inner conditions of the body in a particular way. Maybe the breathing slows or the body softens a little. And so remembering as I offer this practice, this groundedness that's here with you, it's here for you to return to be supported by as we practice this pendulation. So I invite you to let yourself reflect for a moment and bring in that which maybe needs your attention that's been a bit challenging of recent. Maybe it was a difficult interaction, a difficult situation, condition that you found was difficult to meet in the moment. Maybe you call in a little bit of remembering that experience, reflecting on it for a moment. And as you notice this reflection coming in, just getting curious about the emotions or the challenge itself and seeing if you can get curious about what's happening to the body. As you reflect, is it tightening? Is it gripping? Is it bracing somewhere? Is it beginning to get restless, agitated? I want to invite you to just drop for a moment the situation or the interaction or whatever that was and see if you can just be present to the body. Can you turn towards the tightness, the heaviness, the achiness, whatever it is? And notice we may have a tendency to not want to. There may be some resistance. Just be kind to that resistance. No need to force our way to pay attention. And then I'll invite you, as you're attending to that difficulty, however you're sensing it in the body, to now go back and be with that place in the body that you established as grounded, or that place in nature that's grounded. Focusing the attention there now. And then at your own pace, I'm going to invite you to just go back and forth between those two regions. You can spend as little time or as long as feels right to you with difficulty. And just slowly moving the attention between these two places in the body. Not trying to change it, not needing to do anything with it, just honoring that both are here. And then letting go now of that pendulation practice and just letting yourself rest in this moment. Maybe resting in the place that feels grounded, or maybe it feels helpful to just rest with the breath or in an open awareness. Just noticing what it's like to have taken a little time to turn towards this difficulty with this intentional way of paying attention to the body's wisdom with it. And so if you're inclined to move, you're inclined to put a hand or just offer some touch or support to yourself, you can offer that. Sometimes taking care of our body in this way, we begin to receive new signals, new sense of impulses that feel just a little more supportive or clear or helpful. So honoring what that might be. And so we'll make a transition from that practice by just inviting you to take a few breaths if you'd like, and that feels helpful, that are a little longer, a little fuller, maybe stretching your body a little bit. Always really good when we're listening and going towards the body's challenging, difficult, or stuck places to let it move if it feels right. So another opportunity to share if you'd like. It's not uncommon when we do a little somatic pendulation that lots of things can happen, but one of which can happen is the body starts to take deeper breaths, or sometimes we start to get a little digestive activity, or sometimes we just start to feel like we need to move a little differently. That's the wisdom of your body, what's called discharging, actually. So if that began to happen, that's very normal. Sometimes it activates us, meaning we pendulated and it just wanted to keep going up and up and up the difficulty. And that's okay too. It's just more wisdom to know this is something to really pay attention to in our body until we can discover what it needs and how to heal it. So anything anyone would like to share from that practice, you can feel free to unmute. We have a lot of folks not on screen with us, so you are welcome, even if you don't want to come on screen, to just unmute. I realize it's pajama hour, so you don't need to come on in your pajamas. Yeah. Let me also offer, if it was challenging or was difficult for you, please bring that into the space too, if there was a question or challenge about it. Okay, we might not be up for sharing about that practice, so that's okay. Somatic practices, if we're not familiar with them, sometimes the mind gets a little involved in the equation. Like, what am I paying attention to? Where am I going? If you found a little bit of that, that's okay. And sometimes also, I'll just name, it's harder to do somatic practices reflecting than it is in the in vivo moment of your emotional experience or the challenge. So to reflect, you're kind of bringing in the already past experience rather than the one that's here immediately. So I just want to offer that, this practice can be really helpful in a moment of challenge to actually support yourself through it more skillfully. Thank you, Piero. I think I heard grief is love. Yeah. I'm sad, and it's okay to be sad because I love this planet. Yes, it is. Yeah, right. The beautiful work of Joanna Macy, grief is love. We can't have grief if we haven't loved. We can't love without having the grief. We see it being lost in some way. So, yeah, I see you're unmuted. Thank you.
So I found myself getting stuck and not being able to shift. And can you comment on?
Do you mean back and forth between the difficulty and the groundedness? Could you describe your stuckness of what that was like?
Well, I'm familiar with Levine's work, but not in context of this natural process, which is very exciting. The process that I'm aware of is very intellectual in terms of resourcing. So that was really cool. So that was going on in this part of my brain going, oh, you know, new way to deal with this information. That I would get into the supported state and not want to leave that. And then I'd say, okay, well, you know, let's, you know, do the process. And then I would get into the sadness state.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't get out of that. So,
So two stucks. I mean,
yeah.
we'll call one kind of a stuck, and one a for sure stuck. But the one that was like, I don't want to leave this. I'm kind of stuck in the good. Like I was,
I didn't want to leave that.
right. This feels nice. And oh no, now I'm over here and I'm stuck and I don't know my way out. Right. Cause it sounds like it was growing in that intensity way. Yeah. Before I answer, how were you able to support yourself in working with it?
I opened my eyes and looked at the plants that I have around me and remembered where I was and remembered all of that support that I have from the earth. And then I could like sort of pop out of that muck.
Great. Good job. That is the practice of orienting that you organically figured out, your intelligence and your wisdom figured out. And I led us in a somatic practice tonight that was more in the utilization of the resources, groundedness in the body to work with the difficulty. But there's also equally, which I just don't have time to weave in tonight, but your brilliant wisdom of your body is giving us a chance to speak to, is the practice of orienting. So sometimes it's too much to hold both inside the body, but the wisdom of the natural world is here to support holding that difficulty so we can orient to something in the visual field, something in the auditory field, something in the touch field, something that is coming in, and that we intentionally resource ourselves with what we can orient to. And as we bring that in, like you described, maybe there's a little bit more, because we got the outer world with us, a little bit more immediately with the difficulty. It's a little bit easier to hold and pendulate between the two. So we could, you know, for me tonight, it might have been the crickets had I been using orienting, right? Cricket, cricket, heaviness, heaviness, cricket, cricket, heaviness, heaviness, right? And then pendulating in that way, both fine. The wisdom in the body and working with groundedness in the body is that sometimes, not always, the wisdom of the body to move between what feels grounded, this nature being, to know its rootedness, its grounded orientation, just like the beautiful trees that feel grounded. When we root in our own groundedness, sometimes that has a little bit more potency to help eventually unstick the difficulty. Doesn't mean that it's always the case, but there's a weddedness of the deep listening to the wisdom of your body being able to support both in that moment as its own natural being who's working with its survival healing rights to figure out how to release. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's also not a strong suit.
Yes. Yeah. So this goes back to the first section of the book that I really invite people to, you know, and if we have a meditation practice, we probably have more of this, but rooting our presence in just the steadiness of our body grows that skill to practice more of what we just practiced, right? If I can feel, you know, all the different ways my body is being a body, right? The first foundation of mindfulness, body sensing touch on the toes, stretch of a muscle, joint in a certain position, right? I've got all these anchors that I start to know my body as this here-ness that is here for me to ally with and to resource in and to ground it. As that grows more strongly, and that comes through our presence of body with practice of mindfulness, we have more capacity to move towards those intensities and to draw on that wisdom internally. Yeah. So it's both. So orienting and grounding, both helpful. And we figure out where we're going to stretch. So yeah. Yeah. I hope that was helpful. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Appreciate it. So hopefully, right, we start to touch a little bit more of our, oh, this is a little challenging. And in the challenge, we figure out more skillful ways to be taking care of ourselves. So in that, maybe we start to touch like a moment of it is okay to be sad, right? Or I can hold now this much sadness when before I could hold this much sadness, right? We start to grow our potency for being in more intense and more challenging states because we're healing it as we're able to work more somatically and intelligently with it to heal it. And so what that begins to bring online, so the third section of the book really points to, okay, great. So we're starting to trust the wisdom of the body a little. We're listening to taking care of it a little bit differently, healing by moving towards the trauma or the difficulty, which is really hard for us sometimes because we don't want to. It's safer, as Leela, am I saying that correctly? Give me the nod, Leela. No, I'm not saying it right. Sorry. Was sharing with us that it is hard to turn towards, it's easier to stay with the stuff that feels better, but we grow that muscle to get stronger and stronger at turning towards. And in all of that and how it comes together, it reveals, oh my gosh, I have more aliveness now. Oh my gosh, I have more strength to not turn away from the TV. Look at that. Oh my gosh, I'm willing to go to the muck a little bit longer. And that's enlivening to our being, actually. And the wholeness of our being, our right to have the capacity for it. Right? Look at how a tree grows, right? Tree grows, so many beautiful meditation teachers have used the wisdoms of the metaphors of the tree beings who teach us, right? But they grow with the conditions of their life. They don't cease to grow, even when they fall, right? And they decay into the ground. They're another form of their life in that stage becoming another part of life in a different way. So if we don't let our conditions kind of hijack our ability to thrive, our ability to live into our wholeness and our aliveness, which is really what the somatic work is doing, is helping, giving us more agency to that, to not thwart our wholeness, our capacity to thrive, our capacity, our right to live as regulating, alert, alive, organizing, thriving beings. We wake up to that and we have more potency to work with then. Not only the agency of holding more and knowing there's strength and skill in doing that, but there's more health that's here. We've actually grown into more health that speaks to what I was mentioning at the beginning tonight of we need that health, that regulation, and that wholeness to know ourselves, to step into these bigger places with the planet. It takes a lot. It's why people are not doing it, right? To be able to really fully activate ourselves into action. So I wanted to speak a little about the third section, which is really a culmination of different practices, activities, reflections. So I get a little bit more creative as I move through the book about inviting you to make little mandalas or make little ecosystems, this fun little activities that start hopefully seeding creative energy that might be coming forward as you're feeling more healthy. That it gives us ways to start in that more healthy or alive state, really feeling our relationship to the planet and to the things that we feel connected to, so that we might, from that place, take more action. So somebody mentioned this about the tomatoes and the herbs. Yes. So it is fall, yes? And we just had the fall equinox. How many of you really listen and are attuned? And maybe you are because you're nature lovers. I think those of us who are meditators and nature lovers were a little better at this, but that we're attuned to the rhythms that are happening here in this particular time of the year where our beings are residing, right? Probably we're like, great, the leaves are turning red. Somebody mentioned my screen. This is not a backdrop, it's my, it's my backyard, right? But we attune to the colors. Like I geek out on walking out every day, like, oh my gosh, what color has changed, right? My whole nervous system is like, tell me more. And I smell the earth changing and I feel the land cooling. And I am actually present to the energy of this land beginning to slow, right? Now, how many of us, so that might be something we're more present to through our practice. How many of us get into the same rhythm as all that? Or are we bustling around doing our, it's not really fall in here. It's like it's fall out there, but it's not fall in here. When all of the natural world is looking at us and saying it's time for contemplation, it's time for reflection, it's time for slowing, it's time for composting, it's right, it's all doing it. Why not here? So part of that third section is a lot of different practices. This one I'm speaking to is waking up to the health of the rhythms of the natural world. If your being is more regulated, more whole, more feeling alive, you're going to attune to that better. Then you're going to hopefully begin to practice and remember you're not separate from it. And maybe you'll start to listen to honoring the rhythms of your nature cycle as being part of this nature cycle. Right? How many of us at this time of year take time to just be more reflective, to let yourself rest a little bit more? I'm always in awe of my brain's capacity to think I can keep going amidst all of these changing conditions. The light is changing, the, temperature is not saying it's time to keep forging ahead outside. I mean, to get out here at like 6 a.m., which I like to do, and I still do, but I'm bundled like a little Eskimo and I'm starting to come out. It'll get worse when the winter really comes here, but how do I go slower? How do I invite myself into really reflecting on my life a little bit more? What needs to let go? What needs to drop away? What needs to be shed? Right. So when we're in this more alive sense of our being, we can connect to the way the earth is revealing herself to us a little bit better. And the idea of reflecting into the rhythms of the natural world as part of your rhythms too. I'm going to invite us into a little breakout time to have a little discussion about this. Particularly because in that section of the book, there's a little lovely reflection question that I'm going to read to you, and you are going to be put with maybe 2 other people, 3 other people, and we'll just chat for maybe 5 minutes or so just to connect and offer a little bit of Sangha interaction rather than me speaking and just leading practices with you. And so my intent with this is just in the speaking about the rhythms chapter of the book, is to invite you into reflecting on, let me just read the reflection questions from here. So thinking about this time of your life, and you can think about it just in the sense of, maybe the literal sense of this month, this year, this time, right? And what would be helpful if you were in more of that rhythmic awareness to this time of year? What could be 3 simple things that you would be doing in your life now or shifting in your life now that would be more respectful of being in that rhythm? Meaning, for example, one rhythm that I'm really choosing to honor right now is trying to slow down with this season. Right? So I'm just intentionally saying, walk a little slower, move between your activities a little slower, as a way to honor the way the natural world is speaking to my inner world to come back into balance with one another. It's really one very simple way. That could be like more immediate, like here and now. But it could also be like maybe there's something you want to reflect on in your life that's more of like a chapter that you need to contemplate or to reflect, or that needs letting go, or to be more composted at this time. So I will share one that literally came to me when I started working with this practice about a week ago. I've been commuting from California to New Mexico to see my clients about every 4 months. And I became clear in oh, this is the season to let go. I'm done. I am not a Californian anymore. My being is an inhabitant of the New Mexican landscape here. And I'm ready. I'm really ready. And so it's germinating a bunch of new choices that I'll be making. So again, whatever is ripe for you in this reflection, I just invite you into as a community. And Piero, I see you were unmuted. Did you want to share something with me before I put us into breakouts?
Can I share that I understand what you're saying. Perhaps Florida, we don't have so many market seasons, as you
Yes.
know.
Oh, I know, from San Diego, yes.
Yeah, so it's all very much the same. But what I noticed in me when you were talking about it was a resistance.
Mm.
So there was a resistance saying, yeah, it makes sense. I should slow down, but I have so much to do. The world needs me. Like I am super important and I can have an effect on the world. So how come I cannot rest? So I just want to mention that listening to you, although intellectually it made perfect sense,
Yeah.
I noticed this resistance, this pushback in me saying, yeah, the days are changing, there's less light, but still the alarm clock is going to go off at the same time, and I'm going to do my routine, and I'm going to be brave, and I'm going to push through all it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I wanted to share this,
Yeah.
because it was very present in my chest. It's interesting that you speak about
Mhm.
the somatic experience. There was this contraction saying, well, I cannot, it's almost like not giving myself permission to do it.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. So listening to that wisdom, there's something there about that resistance and that contraction and I don't want to. There is a lot to do. That's true. And we also know if we're really wanting to be in this relationship of the wisdom of this earth,
Yeah.
she rests for a reason every day, every night, right? So yeah, it's just an inquiry. It's just a reflection.
Yeah.
So you'll have a lot to share in the group. So I'm going to pause our. I just wanted to share thank you for being willing to engage in that, just a reflection activity. The third section is really inviting us into practices and reflections and different activities, but so that we take the goodness we're cultivating and we kind of get even a little deeper into it, hopefully, and like look a little farther, look a little deeper into all the directions of the ways we can expand the healing connections that we have with the natural world. And so from that, what it leads us to is the fourth section, and probably my favorite, which is, okay, so we're more present, we're more healthy and skillful with our internal landscape of the traumas or the challenges we face. We're more awake and alive and willing to dig deeper into our life. How does all of that translate to giving back to the earth? So as we were talking earlier, like there's a passion, there's an excitement, there's an energy to do or to help or to be a part of. And so each one of us, I firmly believe, in our awakening with the natural world, has gifts that are a part of that natural world that need to be expressed in her healing. Let me say that again. You each, as you awaken with the connection of this natural world and your more embodied sense of being nature with nature, have a unique gift that needs and is to be expressed in the healing and is part of the healing of this natural world. So, what is it? How do you know it? How do you connect to it? Where does it get expressed? So the latter part of the book is exploring, does it take place in our immediate relationships with one another, like our partners in life or our children, or our immediate garden that we're a part of? Does it take place in our communities? Does it take place in our sanghas? Like this sangha, I think this is a beautiful example of it's taking place already. Right? All of you care about the planet and helping in some way, and your unique willingness to be here, be in these conversations, be in the relationship to yourself in a deeper way is already a contributant to the healing of this planet. So there's a lot of different ways we can look at that. It might also be that we want to start living in more integrity with our relationship to the earth. Many of us probably have the experience of being on retreat. We take precepts at the beginning of every retreat to support our being on retreat together as a sangha, and as part of the intent of those precepts. And there's a whole section in the book, or chapter in the book, that I point to. What would it be like to take the precepts and apply them in life every day with the natural world? Non-harming, not speaking unkindly, not intoxicating. And I go through the different ways of kind of reviewing the lens of, are not the intoxicants of our planet the pollution, right? How do we help the planet from that perspective, right? So I'm not going to speak too much to that particular chapter, but it's allowing this more expanded view of our unique healing in relationship with the planet to start permeating in different directions of how we take action and how we make choices to be of service and of support. Maybe you get involved in groups, right? There's the One Earth Sangha has the Eco-Sattva training just on the horizon. If you're not familiar or aware of that, that's a great community to also get involved with and to really explore deeply the climate crisis and the way our practices can support the healing and the help to the climate crisis. There's all kinds of work going on at the Ecodharma Center. So many beautiful people involved in different teachings that point us to the activism and the waking up. But the part I wanted to speak to tonight about maybe reflecting for yourself in chapter 15, that chapter's titled Healing the Earth. There is a passage that I wrote. Some of you may have heard this, but those of you who have not, I think when we're moved so deeply by the pain of the earth and we stand witness with our own regulated healing inside to know that we can choose something differently, there's a powerful moment of action that takes place. And so why, as we know ourselves more deeply and we become more willing to face and turn towards the crises of this planet and of our own selves, because we are part of that. So the crisis is happening to each one of us every moment. That as we wake up to that and we're willing to be present to it, something, like I was saying earlier, will break your heart open. Say, I can't not act. And it's not from a place of up here. It's from a place of the embodied wisdom, knowing our part of being with all of this and caring compassionately, deeply so that we would, of course, give back. It's not even a question. It's not even a thing the mind needs to contemplate. It's just like we act because we care that deeply. We're so wedded in our connection. So I thought I would read to you from the book, The Let Your Heart Break Open. A few paragraphs from a retreat that I sat on, but I was touched in this way. On the last day of a silent meditation retreat, the teacher I was sitting with led us in a sunrise meditation. We sat in a field and meditated as the sun rose over the Sierra Nevadas. The field where the sunrise was to arise began to contain a herd of cows that were moving towards us slowly. About 20 mature cows and about 6 or 7 calves. Our teacher invited us to be present with them as part of the vista. I'm actually going to stop reading because I'm just going to tell you what happened. So as I was sitting on this vista, and these beautiful beings just kept coming closer and closer and closer. I mean, so close that you could see their breath and you could feel it, like the climate of the mist of the morning was changing because they were so close to us. And the crying from the mothers and the playfulness of these cows. And a mother cow and I made eye contact. And I honestly have no idea how long we stayed in connection. We were, maybe it was seconds, maybe it felt like could have been 30 minutes more. She broke my heart open. I could hear her. I could feel her. I could sense her. I could see her care for her love of her calf, her willingness to let that calf run around and explore all the crazy humans sitting in this pasture. And I was brought to tears for her beauty and magnificence and presence and partiveness of this earth. And I had been on and off again vegetarian for so long. There was an instant where my deep love of watching her pain, her fear, her concern, her willingness to get close, her willingness to, like, this whole tug of war of the way we are with the natural earth. There was an immediate vow that came to my heart. I will not eat you. I will not. I will not. And that on and off again was cleared in an instant. I share this because I think there's something about when we're that embodied in our own wedded connection to the partiveness of this planet, and we're moved by the pain of the planet or the fear or the concern or the trauma of the planet, we will act. We will. There's no other way, right? And that's just a small example of choosing to not eat meat anymore, not participating in that cycle, right? But I can tell you when I, sit and watch something like what's going on tonight, today, yesterday, and I let my heart break open to what's happening to the planet and the seawater is changing, right? It moves my heart to want to do more of this work. Like, okay, to the comment that was made earlier, like, but I gotta do something. What about the resting? It's hard, that hard dance of like my being mobilizes and says, oh my gosh, I care so much about this planet. There's more of this coming. How do we mobilize more understanding about the pain of this earth and our relationship to it and how we can help it to heal? Where is my role? I know my role at this moment in time is to help people wake up to healing their trauma. That is my gift. That is where my gift resides and lies at this time. So where can I show up and offer more of that? Right? And my head is, of course, thinking to all of these human beings and the life in that entire region that's experiencing trauma from this climate crisis. We think that climate crisis isn't causing more trauma. It is. It's not only the trauma of the planet, but it's wreaking more trauma on our beings as a species. Right? So even more like heartfelt pull to want to help, to want to help where I know I can help. So to just trust in your wedded connection to the earth and its way, it's waking you up and healing you as the doorway to where we go to help and where we go to take action and where we find skillful means to do so, right? I also know that part of the reason, which I haven't mentioned yet, of why when I turn to that screen and I see all of that is I do feel the trauma of those beings. That's too much for me. Like because I sit with trauma all day, every day, seeing it on that global scale, my being is resonating to it in a way that's wanting to help, but I also have to know I have to take some time to step away and to know I can help where my circle is, where my community is, and know that I have the wisdom to help there. So there's also a skillful turning away and recognizing I know what that is, but I also know I can use it skillfully and not inundate myself with something that's not skillful for my being to then not be able to be a part of the solution. Right. So I'm hopeful that, my kind of taking us a little through the book tonight and offering you the ways that our healing with nature hopefully wakes us up to the healing of nature. And to know that we can help heal her traumas, giving you ideas about where you can do that with yourself. It's on a very, small, way to just not eat meat, or to have your own garden or wherever it might be, or it's to say, I'm showing up and I'm cleaning up the landscape of my neighborhood, or being involved in bigger projects that clean up our earth, whatever it is. So please feel free to chat your goodbyes and your gratitudes or come online without, I'm going to pause and stop the recording so you all can feel free to share what you would like.